Hey everybody, it's Tiffany. Welcome back. I'm back with another video, and today I want to talk about what I would consider a touchy topic. It's a bit of a touchy topic, but I want to talk about rejection today. Rejection, and the reason the thing is I feel like I'm supposed to talk about rejection. I think a lot of people are dealing with rejection or dealing with the effects of rejection. I have dealt with the effects of rejection. I have faced rejection plenty of times in my life. I feel like I'm qualified to talk about rejection. So I'm going to talk about rejection today, and I'm hoping that in discussing this topic that we can get some understanding, kind of get understanding from God's perspective, from the perspective of the Bible. I just want us to get some perspective about what rejection is meant for. The thing about it is rejection doesn't feel good, right? We can be rejected in many different ways. We can be rejected by family. We can be rejected by friends. We can be rejected by someone that we love or that we care about or that we like. We can be rejected by jobs. We looking for our dream job, and then or dream career, and then we go out there trying to blaze the trail and grab those positions or grab that position, and you get rejected, and you don't know why, and you're trying to figure out what's wrong with me. What did I do wrong? What didn't I do right? What can I do better? And maybe I'm not qualified. Maybe I don't know enough. Rejection is one of those things that can really take a toll on a person's self-worth if they don't know who they are in Christ. Rejection is something that can really affect the trajectory of a person's life. For example, sometimes rejection can affect a person in a way where they won't try again in the same place where they were, or in the same area where they were rejected before. Maybe they were rejected in a particular area multiple times, and they have decided they can't do that anymore. A common area that this happens in is in the area of love and relationships. It's interesting because we are so fragile when it comes to our emotions and our hearts, right? We're so fragile, but we can take rejection in certain other areas a lot better than we can take it when it comes to the matters of the heart. And so that is really interesting to me. And I'm thinking about myself, for example. I've been rejected for jobs. It didn't hurt very well. It didn't hurt that much, right? It was like, well, you're not going to hire me, but somebody else will. That it was as simple as that. But in the area of love and relationships, rejection has cut deeply. It's hurt deeply in my own personal life, and so I know I'm not in that alone. I cannot possibly be in that alone. We are human beings. It's something that happens in life, right? But I want to talk about it. I just want to talk about it, and I want to try to get God's perspective in it, and what I believe He was helping me understand about rejection. So a major story in the Bible that I want to talk about in regards to rejection is the story of Joseph. We can talk about the story of Jesus too. It is just as extraordinary, right? I'm sorry, it's even more. I would say it's even more extraordinary because the rejection of Jesus saved our lives, right? And it's still saving lives today. But we're not going to go there. We understand that. We even understand Joseph, but I really want to talk about Joseph. None of us are Jesus. So I really want to talk about Joseph's story because he's a human being just like us. And he went through some really trying times as a human being. And I think it's worth discussing. The amount of rejection that Joseph went through is worth discussing if we're going to talk about rejection. That's just the way that I feel about Joseph's story. But I really enjoy reading about Joseph's story because how he's redeemed after the fact is just wonderful, right? So anyways, rejection. Let me give you the definition. Now, I didn't take the definition from the dictionary.com or something like that. I went to the 1828 Webster's dictionary. And it says, rejection, it says the act of throwing away, the act of casting off or forsaking, refusal to accept or grant. Refusal to accept or grant. And so I'm not going to stay on this topic long. I'm not going to stay on this. I'm hoping I'm not going to stay on this video long. I just want to be on here enough to bring some encouragement. If you're feeling rejected, if you're feeling like you've been constantly rejected countless times over and over in your life, and you are not going to try again. You have decided that you're not trying again. You refuse to try again, and it's not worth trying again. And also, you know, I hope to bring some encouragement for anyone who's feeling the effects of rejection, meaning probably feeling like they're not worthy to receive whatever it is that they've desired, but they've been rejected from, right? If you feel like maybe you don't have what it takes, or you're not enough, or whatever it is, because you faced rejection countless times in your life, that can happen. That has happened to me, okay? That has happened to me. God had to show me that I was struggling in the area of believing him and believing that I was worth receiving what I had desired. And so I questioned myself and asked myself, do I even have what it takes? You know, and just a level of transparency here. For me, it was the area of marriage. It was the area of marriage. And even still to this day, I'm not married, but my concern is one, do I have what it takes to be a wife, right? And if I have what it takes to be a wife, why am I not a wife yet, right? And why is it that, you know, I have faced so much rejection in the area of love and relationships? And, you know, am I even like, these were my thoughts. Am I even worthy to receive the kind of love that I think is out there, right? Like, to me, it seems very rare. It seems like, you know, in order to get that kind of thing that I'm seeing, it has to come from God. I couldn't get it on my own. I don't know what I'm looking I don't know what I'm looking for, right? so that's the way that I feel. That's the way that I think. I don't think that I have the know-how myself to pick someone or to choose wisely in that area. Mainly because I don't have a good track record. Prior to being saved, my track record was not good in terms of relationships. It just wasn't good. I cannot point to you one good choice that I made. Let me think. Let me think. Oh, no, not one. Not one good choice that I made in relationships. I'm gonna think again. Let me think, because sometimes, you know, I forget. I could be forgetful. Nope. Not one good choice. So if I have never made a single good choice in the area of relationships, there is no way I am going to try to make that choice for myself today. I am relying solely on God, okay? Now that was a sidestep, but ultimately what I'm trying to say is that for me, I have been able to handle rejection in a lot of areas, and I have learned to handle rejection even in the areas of relationships. But I think it's because I've been able to understand God's perspective. Prior to understanding his perspective, I was affected by it. My heart was affected by it, right? And if you're not careful, bitterness can come up. You know, you're feeling kind of bitter, you know, like why don't I have it? Why does everyone else have it? Why, you know, and then now you're looking at everybody else and you're wondering, and don't even let them be heathens, like straight up, like they don't even know God. Actually, you know what? No, don't let them be Christians that are actually heathens that don't know God, but they're saying that God did that for them, right? And you know they don't know God. You know they've been doing everything that they wanted to do prior to marriage, right? And so you see those things, and I'm not saying God can't do nothing about that. I'm just being real about what I've thought about, and I know I'm not the only person that's thought about it, right? Or that's seen those things, or that has experienced situations like that. But I did. And so yeah, it can take a toll on you. It can bring bitterness. It can bring resentment. Resentment towards God, or resentment towards people in general. It can bring a level of discontentment, and it can cause you to wonder if you are worthy to receive such a beautiful gift from God. You know, it can make you wonder that. It can make you wonder and make you ask the question, what's wrong with me? Is something wrong with me? Is something wrong with me that I can't seem to find a mate for life? Is something wrong with me, right? That's what it can cause you to think. But that is just not, all of those thoughts don't come from God. None of them come from God. When you start thinking about and start questioning your self-worth, when you start becoming bitter about things, whatever that area is for you, because I know some people have dealt with this. I have a friend, she's a doctor, and she waited 7 years for residency, 7 years, and she knew that God had promised this thing to her. She knew that it was something that she truly deeply desired, and she felt like God kept bringing it up to her, and she could not understand why over a 7-year period she spent all this money applying for residencies that cost a lot of money, and to get rejected year after year after year after year for 7 years. For 7 years. And her story reminds me of Joseph's story, right? It really does, because literally after 7 years, out of nowhere, you know, this residency comes up. She applied for it and it comes up and she gets it. And then not only does she gets it, but she gets engaged. And now she's getting married. And all of this stuff happened so quickly after waiting for so long. To her, 7 years was a long time, and that bitterness crept up, that resentment crept up here and there, and the questioning of God. Why even bring this to me? Why even keep putting this on my heart if you have no intention on giving it to me? If you don't want to give it to me, Lord, then I can just go do something else. I don't have to do this. You know, that was her mindset. And then even with me, my mindset was, Lord, why do you keep putting this on my heart? Look, if you don't want to give me a spouse, a mate for life, then just say you don't have one, and let me move along. You know, let's move along from it. You know, I don't have to have that if that's not what you want for me to have. I only want what you want for me to have, right? So anyway, her story really reminds me of Joseph. But anyway, so I've given you the definition of rejection. Now, Joseph faced rejection with his brothers, right? He faced it with his brothers and his father, actually. Because again, rejection also means refusal to accept. You refusing to accept something, meaning you reject it, right? Well, vice versa. Them refusing to accept Joseph's dream was a form of rejection. And Joseph had this dream that his brothers would bow to him, and then he also had a dream that his father would bow to him. And he shared this dream with them, and the brothers are already jealous of him, right? And they're looking at him, you know, scoffing at him like, what are we supposed to bow to you? Please, like, get out of my face, right? And then the dad, Jacob, Jacob's like, what am I supposed to bow to you? You know, and he dismisses him, right? It's like I'm supposed to, boy, bye. Ain't nobody bowing to you. But Jacob kept it in his mind. He kept it in his mind because he understands the ways of God. And it was a dream that Joseph had, and Joseph had it twice, right? He had it twice. And later on in the book of Genesis, when we're talking about Joseph, Joseph even mentions when he interprets the dream for the cupbearer and the other guy. I forgot what he was. But anyways, when he interprets this dream for them, no. It was Pharaoh. Sorry. When he interprets the dream for Pharaoh, Pharaoh had two dreams. And he told him the dreams are one and the same. And he said the reason you had it twice is because it's firmly decided by God, right? And so I would imagine that made Joseph think back. And it gave him a reminder of the fact that he had the same dream in two ways, but it was the same dream, that they would bow to him one day, right? And he had it twice, which meant it was firmly decided by God that was going to happen. So I would imagine that as Joseph is interpreting that dream for Pharaoh, and as he says that to him, it brings back to his remembrance the dreams that God had given to him. And you know, to wait so long, Joseph was 17 when he was sold by his brothers, and he was 30 when he stood before Pharaoh, right? He was 30 when he stood before Pharaoh. All of this is in the book of Genesis. Genesis, you can start at, you know, you can read the whole book of Genesis, but you can start at 30, I think it's 32. Sorry, I want to make sure I point you in the right direction. 37, I think it's 37. Yeah, it starts in 37. So you can take that 37 all the way to chapter 41 and beyond, the end of Genesis actually. But yeah, so Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. He was 17 when he was sold into slavery by his brothers, which was another form of rejection. But that rejection had to have cut deeply, right? Because these are his brothers, and he does not feel about them the way that they feel about him. He actually cares about his brothers, right? I mean, he was a tattletale, but he cared about his brothers, right? He's the youngest, and so he probably even looked up to his brothers, you know. But they were jealous of him. But I don't read in the Bible that Joseph was jealous of them at all, or that he had any of those kinds of feelings towards them, right? And so here he is. He's the youngest. He's the baby, if you will, right? And they reject him so much. They despise him so much, you know. That had to have cut deeply at 17 years old to know that your own brothers don't like you. It makes me think about certain things, you know, when I think about that. But that would be a difficult pill to swallow, to have all of these brothers and they all feel the same way, like they all can't stand you, right? So they reject him. They take him, they throw him in the pit like he's nothing. They throw him in the pit like he's nothing, and they sell him like he's nothing. They sold him for 20 shekels of silver. It was 20 shekels of silver, and I think the going rate at that time, something that I read, was like the going rate for a slave was like 30 shekels. So they didn't even sell him for the top price. It was, you know, give us 20 and you can take them, right? But to be sold into slavery, first of all, let me just paint this picture for you. Because when they put Joseph in the pit, they sat down around the pit and started eating, while Joseph is in the pit wanting to get out, probably asking them, please guys, let me out, come on now, get me out of this pit, please, come on, you know, begging for them to let him out of the pit. And then he might hear them talking about selling him, right? Then here comes this caravan, they come up and he sells them, they sell him for 20 shekels, and now he is a slave. Now he is a slave in a foreign land in Egypt, without his family, a 17-year-old boy without his family, rejected by his brothers, hated and despised by his brothers. And he knows that his father does not know where he is or what is going on with him. And he doesn't know if he's going to live or die. But right now, he is a slave. Okay? But what's interesting is that what I found that was very interesting about it, give me one second, was that in chapter 39, in chapter 39, 4 times it talks about how God was with Joseph. It says in verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man. Now this is in Egypt. Again, now his master saw that the Lord was with him. That was in verse 3. Then we go to verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him, right? And this was after Joseph was accused of coming on to Potiphar's wife. But it says God was with him. And then in verse 23, Joseph is in jail. And it says the Lord was with him. So the Lord was with Joseph all this time during all this rejection. God is behind the scenes orchestrating everything. Have you ever been in a situation where somebody did you dirty? I mean, they did you wrong, right? And you like, you know what? God don't like ugly. God don't like ugly, right? But you go on down the line and nothing happens to them. You know, you think God is going to avenge you in some way, that God's going to show them that he is with you in some way. You think that God is going to do something like that, but he doesn't do that. No, he does nothing to them at that time. He does nothing to them. And you wonder, how is it that God, that they're allowed to do something like that to me and you do nothing to them? And you don't understand that the reason that it happened is because God allowed it for a purpose and for a reason. And some situations are harder to accept this idea or this notion. They're a little harder than others to accept, right? There are situations where it's just difficult for somebody to be able to see that God had to be in this in some way, some form or fashion. I think about people who are raped. I think about people who are almost killed, you know, and they may think, tell me how could God be in a situation like this? But healing and restoration is from God. It is in God. And there are people that have gone through those situations that God has redeemed, he has healed, he has saved, and now they're helping to save other people. So everybody's walk is different, right? But that's a supernatural thing. That's a supernatural thing, and it's not something that a human being can do on their own. It comes from God. It comes from God. So saying that to say, okay, so now Joseph is rejected by his brothers. He's sold into slavery, and then he is rejected again by Potiphar. He's thrown into jail, not even able to defend himself, right? He's just guilty. He's just guilty because she says that he did what she said that he did, right? So he's rejected again, and then he's thrown into jail. And he's in jail, and he is he's doing what he is naturally gifted to do by God. God has given him a gift of leadership, and he is in this situation where he is exercising that gift, right? He's exercising that gift, and I would imagine at that time he's not thinking that this has anything to do with the promise that God gave him. He's just in jail doing what he knows to do, but God put that gift in him. So Joseph was rejected then as well. But like I said, the Lord was with Joseph, right? He was with Joseph. And so Joseph is in jail. He's successful. Joseph is learning some things, and I want to kind of highlight something here. We don't hear Joseph talking about God. We don't get a glimpse of Joseph praying to God. We don't get an understanding of what Joseph's relationship is with God per se, right? But he does mention God when it comes to interpreting the dreams, and it was a casual, it's from God, right, that this dream is able to be interpreted, that God does the interpretation, right, just like Daniel when he did that, right? So he says these things, but he doesn't, you don't actually understand his relationship with God. You don't get you don't get any insight into what that is. You just know that God is with him, but you don't hear him praying, talking to God, any of those things. But God's in the background and he's with him. That I thought that was interesting. The other thing is you don't hear Joseph, you don't read about Joseph weeping to God, cursing God, being angry with God, contending with God. You don't get any of that. You don't. It's really interesting. I had to ask myself, Lord, ask God, why is it that in this book, Joseph's a human being? I can't imagine that he went through these things and did not question God once. I can't imagine that he went through these things and he knows God and he did not have some sort of feeling against God once, even in a moment of weakness, right? I can't imagine that he didn't. But God doesn't have it recorded in the scriptures. So the only thing that I can think is maybe the book of Job, maybe the book of Joseph, maybe the story of Joseph, God is trying to show us how we should deal with rejection, how we should deal with situations that we have to go through that are not ideal, and it feels like God may not be with us. But how do we walk through those situations, right? Could it be that God's trying to show us that the right way to wait upon him is to be still, is to be quiet. The right way to wait upon him is to wait and be fruitful in the process. The right way to wait upon God to deliver you or to redeem you or to raise you up and exalt you or deliver you, whatever, the right way to wait for a promise to come to pass is to be productive in the process of waiting. Even if you're in a place where you don't want to be. Joseph did not want to be in jail. However, he was successful even in jail. He found favor even in jail, right? So you may be a janitor. You may be cleaning homes. You may be working at McDonald's. You may be doing just a job that you genuinely don't want to do, right? And you were wondering, where is God? I've been following you. I've been faithful. I've been with you. I have walked in the counsel of the godly. I have aimed to walk holy before you. Why can't I catch a break? Why can't I catch a break? You may be wondering that. But at the same time, you find favor in the eyes of people where you are, in the eyes of your boss where you are. You find that favor, right? And you're wondering, how long is this going to last? Could it be that God simply wants you to be fruitful and productive where you are? Don't give up and throw God to the side and say, well, you know what? He's not with me. He must not be real. I quit. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to do whatever, right? I'm not living for God anymore. I'm going to do what I want to do. So if I want to, what's the point in waiting? I might as well just go sleep around. That could be a thing. That could have been my mindset, right? Well, what's the point in waiting on God if he's just going to give this gift to people who don't believe in him anyways, who are not following him anyways, right? So what's the point of following God when I can just do what I want to do and he'll bless it anyways, right? That's the wrong idea to have. All of those ideas, all of those thoughts are the wrong ones to have, and they don't come from God, right? They come out of our flesh, out of our wicked hearts. And I think sometimes there's suggestions that come from external sources that are not from us, right? Just the things that we watch, the things that we see, you don't never know how those things are affecting you. But you're going through this and you're wondering, where is God and when you're going to catch a break? But I'm just going to suggest that you may need to just be fruitful where you are and continue to stay close to God and have faith in God and to continue to trust him, that he is with you, especially if you've given your whole life to him. I mean, like every area of your life you've given it to him. Then I would say, don't give up. Don't backslide. Don't give up everything that you've built up spiritually, right? That's what matters the most. The spiritual maturity is what matters the most in this walk on this earth. It is not physical or material accolades, things that we've received physically or materially. It has nothing to do with that. The greatest gift is what you develop spiritually from God. How God is working in you and through you. His Holy Spirit is in you, working through you, and how you develop the fruit of the Spirit, and then how the fruit of the Spirit that you've developed affects other people around you, so that when they partake of your fruit, they are eating something good. They are partaking of something good, and then they too are influenced, right? And so that fruit passes on to the next person and the next person and the next person, right? So that's the greatest gift. That's the thing that's going to get you saved. That's your ram in the bush, if you will. That's what's going to get you home, right? Your walk with God, right? So anyways, saying all that to say, you don't give up. You continue to be fruitful. Joseph was fruitful where he was, in jail. Okay? In jail. He was ruling in jail. He was a leader in jail. And guess what? Everything that he was doing in jail was practice for what he was about to walk into at 30 years old. At 30 years old. Let me explain something to you. In 24 hours, in a 24-hour time frame, right? And you can look at this in Genesis 41, verses 39 and 45. Just a few verses, literally just a few verses, and the whole tide shifts, right? So Genesis 41, 39 through 45. In a matter of 24 hours, in less than 24 hours, Joseph went from a prisoner to a free man. He went from a slave to a ruler. He went from single to married, okay? Or we can say taken, because Potiphar had given him, Pharaoh had given him his daughter. He went from the bottom to the very top, right next to Pharaoh, right? And he went from poor to rich in 24 hours. And first of all, let me take it back. In a moment's time. Because if you look at the verses, Pharaoh said all of this to him and did all of this for him literally in a couple of verses. With his words, he spoke these things to him and told him, I'm giving you this and that, and I'm putting you over this, and only in this area am I above you, and I'm giving you my daughter. So he said it in a matter of verses, and it was done. It was done in a moment's time. I'm trying to think. You can get a lot of words in a minute. So it might have taken Pharaoh. Well, they speak in a long way. They use all these long phrases and stuff like that. They use extra words that I try not to use today. But so maybe it took Pharaoh maybe it took Pharaoh 5 minutes to say everything that he said to Joseph, right? Maybe it took a matter of 10 minutes for Joseph to interpret the dream and give Pharaoh the suggestion of what to do, and Pharaoh to say, look, who else can it be? It must be you, right? Let's say 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, Joseph's whole life changed at 30 years old. But the promise that the dream that he had still had not come to pass. That dream did not come to pass until after the 7 years prosperity, the 7 years of abundance, and then the 7-year famine hit. Well, it was the beginning of that 7-year famine that the promise actually happened for Joseph, where his brothers and his father came and they all ended up bowing to him, right? So he had to have been maybe 38, 39, I would say, somewhere in that area between 37 and 39. Between 37 and 39. And that's how long it took for that particular promise to come to pass. But you don't hear him complaining. You don't hear him fighting with God. You don't hear him warring in the spirit. You don't hear him constantly praying and asking God for the same thing over and over. When, God, when, God, when, God, when. You don't get that. This was something that God had to show me. Do you see Joseph doing that? Do you see what Joseph had to go through? But do you read in the word, do you read in the scriptures Joseph complaining anytime? Do you read about Joseph crying out and begging God at any point in time? Do you see him cursing God? shutting God out. No, you don't see any of that. You have no record of Joseph doing that in the Bible. So that tells me that God wants us to wait in a mature way for him. He wants us to be fruitful, be productive, continue to be with him, continue to trust him, continue to know that he's in our lives. That's what God wants us to do when we're in the process of waiting for a promise to come to pass. Right? And going back to rejection, because what is rejection for? The rejection that Joseph faced was meant for, it was for the purpose of Joseph going down the road that he had to go down, so that he can get to where he had to go, so that he can save the people from the famine. God took Joseph through all of that, the rejection and everything. So nothing happened to the brothers, right? Other than them bowing to him and that dream coming to pass. But God didn't punish them. He didn't, take them out or anything like that. He didn't avenge Joseph in that way at all, because they were supposed to do that. They didn't know it. What they did was wrong, but it was the will of God. That's what he wanted them to do, right? That's what he wanted them to do. So it was meant for Joseph to be rejected, right? Now, if Joseph was not rejected, if he was not thrown in that pit, he would have been right there with his brothers when the famine hit. And they could have died from that famine, right? He would have been right there with his brothers when that famine hit, going on over there to Pharaoh. And think about it. Pharaoh wouldn't have had anybody to interpret his dream, so he wouldn't have known that a famine was coming, and the famine would have struck him by surprise. So many people, many lives would have been lost because of this famine, right? The rejection was for a purpose. That's all I'm saying about rejection. That's the thing that you need to understand, is that rejection is for a purpose. It's for a purpose. Now, I'm going to leave it here for this particular message, but I want to come back. I have a part 2 to this rejection piece, and we're going to look at Abraham and Sarah, but in light of rejection and in light of the other purpose that rejection is for. So right now, again, the purpose of the rejection is for a purpose. It's for a purpose, right? And for Joseph, the rejection was necessary for him to get to where he needed to be, so Pharaoh could know about the famine and so that the people can be saved. But that is only a piece of the puzzle. The rejection that Joseph faced changed the trajectory of his life in a way that it not only saved his family, it not only saved the people of Egypt, but it got the Hebrews grown in Egypt, right? Remember, they were in Egypt for about 400 years before Moses came along and delivered them from Egypt, right? And freed them from Egypt, freed them from slavery. So, but all of that's God's plan. It was God's plan for all of Joseph's family to move to Egypt, for them to grow and be prosperous there. And then we know the story. We know that that they're gonna, the pharaohs are gonna die. There's gonna be one that did not know Joseph. They're going to have an issue with how the Hebrews became prosperous and abundant, and they were very numerous, right? And so they had a problem with that, right? All of that was for God's purpose. Every single bit of it. Why? Because it all leads up to the bigger picture. It all leads up to Christ. So all of these pieces to this puzzle is for a purpose. So you think about your rejection in light of that, the rejection that you've dealt with, the rejection that you faced in light of that, and think, this is just one piece of this grand puzzle, this grand scheme that God has, this grand plan and design that God has, and this is only a portion of it, a small piece of it, but it is for a purpose. Now, what that purpose is something that you have to sit with God and get an understanding about. I can't tell you what that purpose is, what rejection is for in your life, right? But I can tell you that it's for a purpose. But what that purpose is specifically, that's something that you need to sit down with God and figure out. He's your maker. He understands why he's allowing you to deal with that kind of rejection. He knows why, right? But I don't. And so you have to go to him. And if you've been hesitant to do that, if you've been hesitant to go to him, hesitant to pray, hesitant to ask him, because of resentment or hardness of heart, that is going to be your loss if you don't figure it out, if you don't understand, if you don't get understanding, if you don't get wisdom about the situation. And in the book of James, it talks about that God will give you wisdom if you would just ask. When you're going through tough times, ask for wisdom, and he will give it to those who believe. When you ask in faith, right? So that's what I want to say about that. If that's where you are, sit down with God. And if you feel like it's hard for you to hear, that your heart may be hardened, it might be time for a fast. That is the one discipline that God has given us that I know that works to cause us to be able to hear better, right? To get understanding better and get wisdom better. So you may need to fast. And if it's been a while, 3 days is not enough. 3 days is not enough. Because you have to get the distractions out of the way. You have to get, if it's not distractions, the technology out of the way. You have to remove a lot of things and really focus your heart and set your heart towards God. That's what you have to do. So I'm going to leave it there, but just know that rejection is for a purpose. And I'm going to challenge you to seek God to find out what that is. And if you have a hard time hearing, I'm going to challenge you to a fast. I'm going to challenge you to a fast. So I'll leave it at that. I was not planning on being on here that long, but I don't ever plan on being on here that long. But sometimes the Bible, it gets so good and you get so much out of it. And so you just got to talk about it. And I didn't have anyone to talk to. It seemed like I was supposed to tell you and talk to you about rejection. So I'll be back with the part 2. And I am going to talk about rejection in another light and just let you know another way that God uses rejection. All right. Well, if you like this video, please subscribe. If you want to be in tune with other videos that come out, and hit the alert button so that way you can be alerted when new videos come out. I don't have a set schedule. I kind of just move to my own beat, I guess, or maybe I move to God's beat. I don't know. So I don't have a set schedule, but click on the bell so you can get the alerts, and then subscribe if you like this channel and you're interested in more content that I have coming out. So also I have other content on my website, TiffanyRoss.com. It's not the common Tiffany spelling, it's TIFFINEY .Ross.com. Sorry, TiffanyRoss.com. That is the website. You can go there, and I have some meals for fasting there as well. I have a blog there. You can purchase some items that if you like, and just kind of get an understanding about what I do outside of here, and maybe you'll understand why I don't always get a chance to post videos. So anyways, I hope you have a great day, a great night, great evening, a wonderful holiday if you're in America. For the 4th of July, and if you're not living in America, just a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day. Bye.